This is the 5th generation iPad Air. It just came out on March 18th, and guess what? It's a great tablet. One of the best on the market, actually. Perhaps the only better tablet out there is Apple's own iPad Pro. But even then, there's not a ton of differences between the iPad Air and the Pro lineup right now. What has been updated with this new model? Because the design hasn't changed. You would be hard pressed to tell the difference between the 4th gen and the 5th gen just by looking at them side by side. Now there is a new blue color option, so if you got that one, people could tell you have the latest and greatest. But I just went with the space gray. Other than that, there's a few minor updates. For example, they've doubled the throughput on the USB-C port to make transferring files and data faster. They've updated the front-facing camera with a 12 megapixel ultra wide, which allowed them to add the center stage feature for FaceTime calls, which widens the frame when more people enter the shot. If you get the cellular version, you get the 5G cellular capabilities as well. As 5G becomes more available, having access to the faster speeds allows for a better overall experience browsing the web, downloading content, and so on. I personally don't have a need for cellular connectivity, but it's a win for those who do. But all of those updates are secondary to the very real upgrade in the processor. Apple has put their game-changing M1 chip in here. This is the same chip that is now in the iPad Pro, the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, and iMac. In other words, it's a desktop class processor that fits in a 1/4 inch super thin tablet. That's amazing when you think about it. It's powerful enough to be in a desktop computer, but efficient enough to live in this tablet. But the previous generation iPad Air was no slouch either. The 4th gen packs Apple's A14 Bionic, and Apple already had the fastest tablet on the market. So check this out. I've got my 4th gen iPad Air on the left beside the 5th gen on the right. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. When it comes to my favorite type of comparison, which is the app launch comparison, the 5th gen iPad Air edges out the 4th gen on every single app. In some cases, it's not a big difference at all. In others, it's significant, up to 5 seconds. So we know it's got plenty of speed. But that brings up the age-old question of, can you use an iPad as a computer? I mean, it kind of looks like a computer. I ended up getting the Smart Keyboard Folio as well. And really, that's a must if you're going to do any heavy word processing. But that can't be as good as having a laptop, can it? Well, let's put that to the test. Let's start with gaming. The iPad Air with the M1 chip is definitely a powerhouse, but is it good for gaming? It has 8 gigabytes of memory, so compared to a gaming PC, it isn't going to deliver the same performance. However, we're talking about the casual gamer here, or someone who wants to game on the go. Obviously, if you're a gamer, someone who games regularly, this isn't for you. But for most of us who like to pick up a game and have some fun, the iPad has a lot of options. Now, because the iPad is a closed ecosystem, all of those options reside in the App Store. But if you go and look, you'll find 22 categories of games, including action, adventure, sports, racing, simulation, and strategy. There's action and adventure games like SpongeBob SquarePants, Lego Star Wars, and Minecraft, which is a personal favorite in our household. You've got sports and racing games like NBA 2K, F1, Asphalt 9, and Rocket League Sideswipe. Plus, there's strategy games like Tropico, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and Command and Conquer. A lot of these games are mobile versions, meaning they're not the original or the same as they are on PC, but some of these games you can't even get on the PC. One thing that's great about the iPad is you can connect game controllers from Sony and Microsoft and others, which makes playing some games way better. Once you've got a controller in your hand and you're playing a high quality game, you could easily be convinced you're playing on a console. The iPad is powerful and fast, and the gaming experience is probably the best you can get in this form factor. What's one of the most common things you need to do with a computer? Something computers have been used for since day one. Word processing. Fun, I know, right? But is it doable on an iPad? Well, let's start with the available apps. you have the big three: Microsoft Word, Google Docs, and Apple Pages. And these are fully functioning apps, and they're cloud-based, meaning you can even start a document elsewhere and pick it up on your iPad. My experience is with Google Docs mostly. Google Docs is not as fully featured as Microsoft Word, for example, but it certainly does the trick for my needs. In fact, I edit all of my scripts with it. With a keyboard, you can really go almost as fast as with a laptop. Maybe you would have a tough time doing an entire essay on here because the screen is not quite as big as on most laptops. It's 10.9 inches, where most laptops have usually a 13-inch screen. But I also find that makes it so versatile. I can comfortably sit back in my living room chair, and I can sit at an angle that would probably be a bit uncomfortable with a bulky laptop, and I can just type away. Now, browsing the web has been a good experience on the iPad for a long time. Back when the iPad originally debuted in 2010, the web browsing experience was pretty janky. That's because most websites still weren't optimized for mobile devices or different screen sizes and so on. There were also web technologies like Flash, which just didn't work on the iPad. Nowadays, though, I never run into a website that doesn't work properly. The websites load quickly and the scrolling is smooth. There's really no public website that will give you problems. However, there may be company or school-specific websites that are still coded in older web standards that you might want to check on. The iPad comes with Safari, but you can also download lots of other browsers like Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, and Brave. Heavier tasks like video editing is where the workflow starts to break down just a bit. Yes, you can do video editing on an iPad. No, you can't do the most high-end stuff. However, you will still be surprised with what you can get done on an iPad. You should also feel free to explore options outside of Apple's apps. Apple has their classic video editor, iMovie, available on the iPad. They also have their short-form video editor, Clips. But you'll find other high-quality video editors like Adobe Premiere Rush and Splice. But you can't get Apple's professional video editing suite, Final Cut Pro. However, I did take a crack at editing this entire video on the iPad, and I have to say the experience was pretty smooth overall. Now, of course, one of the most popular pastimes when it comes to using a computer is watching media, like movies and TV shows. Is an iPad better for watching content? I think it's an easy yes, with one important exception. Think about it this way. The iPad is light and it's mobile. You can carry it anywhere, which you can't really do with a laptop. It doesn't get hot like a laptop does, where it starts to get uncomfortable. On the iPad, you can download native apps from the most popular streaming services like Netflix, Disney, and Prime. That also means you can download movies and TV for offline viewing, which is great if you're going to be on a plane or a road trip or something like that. On top of that, you've got a great quality screen, a 10.9-inch LED display with 264 pixels per inch and 500 nits of brightness. What's not to love? The only exception is if you're watching with another person or a group of people. If you're going to have to set the device further away, you get some advantages with a laptop, namely a typically larger display and louder speakers. But as a personal media consumption device, the iPad Air can't be beat. Okay, so now we have gone through and done most of the main things people do with computers. It's pretty clear that you can indeed use the iPad as a computer. Are you going to get the exact same experience as a laptop? No. Is it going to be suitable for power users? Not really. Workflows that require a more robust setup definitely still need a powerful, versatile computer. But for the average consumer who buys a new laptop every few years and never really pushes their workflow, it's absolutely fine to use an iPad. Now, that recommendation comes with a few caveats. The first is that if it's within your budget, you should try and get the iPad Air or Pro. I'm testing the new 5th gen iPad Air with the M1 chip in it, so it's fast. And I've never once ran into any noticeable slowdowns. That's not going to be the case if you go with the base model iPad, which uses the A13 Bionic chip. I don't think the base model iPad is slow by any means, but you are going to have more performance headroom for years to come if you go with the iPad Air. Secondly, you should get, at minimum, the Smart Keyboard Folio, which is what I have. Or you can spring for the Magic Keyboard, which has the trackpad built in. To do things that a lot of people need to do on a regular basis, like taking notes in class or writing a paper, you absolutely need a real keyboard for that. Not only is it faster, but it's more accurate as well. And you might think that the software keyboard is fine for some quick entry type activities, but you will get tired of it really quickly if you need to use it for any extended period of time. And finally, you'll notice there's two storage configurations available when purchasing the iPad Air, 64 gigabytes and 256 gigabytes. If you're going to use this as your daily computer, you should definitely get the larger storage capacity. Ultimately, 64 gigs just isn't a lot of storage. Yes, you can store some things on the cloud, just like you could with a regular computer, but I would never want a 64 gigabyte computer either. So I'd steer clear of that on the iPad. And there's some things it does better than a laptop as well. For one thing, it's got a touch screen, which not all laptops have. You can also pair an Apple Pencil if you want to do freehand writing or detailed drawing. The iPad also has a rear camera on it, and the iPad Air has a pretty good one. A 12 megapixel wide angle lens that takes as good of photos as most smartphones out there. So what do you think? I know many of you have iPads. Do you think that you could use it as your main computer? What features or capabilities is it lacking? In what ways do you think it's better than a computer? Thanks so much for checking out the video. If you found it was interesting, consider giving the video a like so that more people can find it. And I'm always uploading something new, so if you want to catch that content, click that subscribe button. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one.